Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that an applicant has presented their Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma entrance examination application. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for processing this application? Option A. Consider the applicant's social media presence and perceived popularity as indicators of their suitability for university life, alongside their academic performance. Option B. Prioritize the application based on a strong recommendation letter from a prominent alumnus, even if academic scores are slightly below the stated threshold. Option C. Assess the applicant's potential to contribute financially to the university through future donations, considering this as a significant factor in their admission. Option D. Evaluate the applicant's academic qualifications against the published entry requirements for the chosen program and ensure they meet the minimum score set by the university. Correct answer is D. Evaluate the applicant's academic qualifications against the published entry requirements for the chosen program and ensure they meet the minimum score set by the university. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles governing university admissions at Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma, specifically concerning fairness and adherence to established guidelines. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that best aligns with these principles, ensuring that the decision-making process is equitable and transparent, and avoids any form of bias or undue influence. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate considerations and those that could compromise the integrity of the admissions process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's academic qualifications against the published entry requirements for the chosen program. This is the most appropriate method because it directly reflects the established regulatory framework and guidelines for Ambrose Alli University's entrance examinations. The university's admission policy, as outlined in its prospectus and examination guidelines, mandates that all applicants must meet specific academic criteria. Adhering to these published requirements ensures a standardized, objective, and fair evaluation process for all candidates, upholding the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity, which are fundamental to academic institutions. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that prioritizes personal recommendations or connections over stated academic qualifications is ethically flawed and violates the university's admission regulations. Such a practice introduces subjectivity and potential bias, undermining the fairness of the selection process and creating an uneven playing field for other applicants. It disregards the established merit-based system that the entrance examination is designed to uphold. An approach that focuses solely on the applicant's perceived financial capacity or ability to pay fees, irrespective of their academic performance, is also unacceptable. University admissions are primarily based on academic merit and suitability for a course of study, not on an applicant's financial status. This approach is discriminatory and contravenes the principles of equal access to education. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or past performance in unrelated fields without verifying current academic standing against the entrance exam criteria is unprofessional. While prior experience might be a secondary consideration in some contexts, the primary gateway for admission through the entrance exam is demonstrated academic competence as per the university's stated requirements. Failing to adhere to these specific criteria renders the evaluation arbitrary. Professional reasoning. Professionals involved in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to institutional policies, regulatory guidelines, and ethical principles. This framework involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the specific admission criteria and procedures of Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma. 2. Applying these criteria objectively and consistently to all applicants. 3. Seeking clarification from relevant university authorities if any ambiguity arises regarding the guidelines. 4. Maintaining transparency and fairness throughout the entire admissions process, ensuring that decisions are justifiable and defensible based on established standards. Question 2. When evaluating an applicant's suitability for admission to Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma, and considering the applicant's desire to present themselves in the most favorable light for the entrance examination, which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines? Option A. accurately detailing all academic qualifications, achievements, and any relevant extracurricular activities, even if some aspects are not exceptionally strong, while ensuring all information is verifiable. Option B, exaggerating the scope and impact of past academic projects and responsibilities to highlight perceived leadership qualities and problem-solving skills. Option C, submitting an application that omits mention of any academic challenges or lower grades encountered in previous educational pursuits. Option D, engaging a third party to create a more impressive academic transcript that reflects a higher GPA than originally achieved. The correct answer is A, accurately detailing all academic qualifications, achievements, and any relevant extracurricular activities, even if some aspects are not exceptionally strong, while ensuring all information is verifiable. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles of academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair admission processes, as stipulated by Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination guidelines. The applicant must navigate the ethical dilemma of presenting potentially misleading information while understanding the severe consequences of academic dishonesty. Careful judgment is required to discern between acceptable self-presentation and outright misrepresentation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves truthfully and accurately representing one's academic qualifications and achievements. This aligns directly with Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination regulations, which emphasize honesty and integrity in all application materials. By providing genuine information, the applicant upholds the principles of academic fairness and demonstrates respect for the university's admission standards. This approach ensures that the applicant is evaluated based on their actual merit and potential, fostering a transparent and equitable selection process. Incorrect approaches analysis. Presenting inflated or fabricated academic achievements is a direct violation of Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination guidelines concerning academic integrity and honesty. This constitutes academic misconduct, which can lead to immediate disqualification from the entrance examination and potential blacklisting from future admissions. Omitting relevant academic details that might be perceived as a weakness, even if not explicitly false, can be considered a form of misrepresentation. The university expects a complete and truthful disclosure of all academic history. Failure to do so undermines the integrity of the application and the admission process. Seeking external assistance to falsify academic records or create misleading documentation is a severe ethical breach and a criminal offense. This not only violates the university's regulations, but also demonstrates a fundamental lack of character and a willingness to engage in fraudulent activities, making the applicant entirely unsuitable for admission. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic admissions, and indeed applicants themselves, should adopt a decision-making framework rooted in transparency, honesty, and adherence to established regulations. This involves a thorough understanding of the institution's rules and ethical expectations. When faced with a situation where personal qualifications might seem insufficient, the professional approach is to seek legitimate avenues for improvement or to present one's existing qualifications truthfully, rather than resorting to deceptive practices. The guiding principle is to uphold the integrity of the process and to ensure that decisions are based on genuine merit and ethical conduct. Question 3. The assessment process reveals that a candidate for Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's entrance examination has demonstrated exceptional performance in the written test, but has a slightly lower score in the aptitude section compared to other high-scoring candidates. The examiner is aware that this candidate comes from a disadvantaged socioeconomic background, which may have impacted their access to preparatory resources. In light of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam guidelines, which of the following approaches best upholds the integrity and fairness of the admission process? Option A. Recommending the candidate for a special interview to further assess their potential, independent of the standardized test scores, due to their perceived potential despite the aptitude score. Option B. Strictly adhering to the scores obtained in both the written test and the aptitude section, as per the established marking scheme, and admitting the candidate if they meet the overall cutoff score based on these objective results. Option C. Adjusting the cutoff score for candidates from disadvantaged backgrounds to ensure a certain representation, thereby allowing this candidate to be admitted. Option D. Awarding the candidate a slightly higher score in the aptitude section to compensate for their socioeconomic background, thereby ensuring they meet the overall admission threshold. The correct answer is D. Awarding the candidate a slightly higher score in the aptitude section to compensate for their socioeconomic background, thereby ensuring they meet the overall admission threshold. Explanation. The assessment process for Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examinations requires adherence to specific guidelines to ensure fairness, transparency, and academic integrity. A professionally challenging scenario arises when there's ambiguity in interpreting these guidelines, potentially leading to biased or discriminatory evaluation of candidates. Careful judgment is paramount to uphold the university's standards and the principles of equal opportunity. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict application of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination regulations. This means evaluating candidates solely based on the criteria established by the university, such as academic merit, aptitude tests, and any specified admission requirements, without introducing external or personal biases. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the regulatory framework by ensuring a standardized and objective assessment process, thereby preventing any form of unfair advantage or disadvantage. An incorrect approach would be to consider factors outside the defined examination criteria, such as a candidate's perceived socioeconomic background or personal connections. This violates the principle of meritocracy, which is fundamental to university admissions. Such considerations introduce bias and undermine the integrity of the entrance examination, potentially leading to the selection of less qualified candidates and the rejection of more deserving ones. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of fair assessment practices mandated by the university's admission policy. Another incorrect approach is to apply inconsistent evaluation standards across different candidates. This could manifest as being more lenient with certain candidates while being overly critical of others, even when their performance is comparable. This lack of standardization is a direct breach of the regulatory requirement for a uniform and objective assessment process. It creates an uneven playing field and erodes trust in the examination's fairness. The professional reasoning process for such situations involves prioritizing the explicit regulations and guidelines set forth by Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma for its entrance examinations. When faced with ambiguity, the professional should seek clarification from the relevant examination authorities rather than making subjective interpretations. The decision-making framework should always be rooted in fairness, objectivity, and adherence to established rules, ensuring that every candidate is assessed equitably based on their qualifications and performance within the defined parameters of the entrance examination. Question 4. Analysis of the ethical considerations and procedural adherence expected of candidates applying for admission to Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. Which of the following actions best exemplifies a commitment to academic integrity during the entrance examination process? Option A. Seeking to obtain past examination papers from unofficial sources to prepare for the exam. Option B. Attempting to bribe an invigilator for advance information about the exam content. Option C. Collaborating with other candidates during the examination to share answers. Option D. Refraining from any form of malpractice and relying solely on personal preparation and understanding of the syllabus. The correct answer is A. Seeking to obtain past examination papers from unofficial sources to prepare for the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge for prospective Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma students by requiring them to understand the foundational principles of university admission, specifically focusing on the integrity of the entrance examination process. The challenge lies in discerning the ethical and procedural implications of actions that could compromise this integrity. Careful judgment is required to identify actions that align with academic honesty and institutional regulations. The correct approach involves understanding and adhering to the official Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination guidelines, which unequivocally prohibit any form of malpractice. This includes abstaining from seeking unauthorized assistance, possessing prohibited materials, or engaging in any activity that could be construed as cheating. Adherence to these guidelines is ethically imperative, ensuring a fair and equitable assessment for all candidates and upholding the academic standards of the university. This aligns with the university's commitment to meritocracy and the principle that admission should be based on genuine academic performance. An incorrect approach that involves attempting to obtain examination questions in advance is a direct violation of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination regulations. This constitutes academic dishonesty and undermines the fairness of the examination process. Such an action not only disqualifies the candidate, but also reflects a disregard for ethical conduct and the principles of academic integrity. Another incorrect approach, such as colluding with other candidates or invigilators to gain an unfair advantage, is also a severe breach of the examination rules. This demonstrates a lack of personal integrity and disrespect for the examination system. It creates an uneven playing field and devalues the achievements of honest candidates. A further incorrect approach, like presenting forged documents or false information during the application or examination process, is a fraudulent act. This not only violates the university's admission policies, but also carries legal implications. It is a clear attempt to deceive the institution and gain admission through illegitimate means. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a clear understanding of the rules and regulations governing the specific examination or assessment. Candidates must prioritize honesty, integrity, and fair play. When faced with a situation where an unethical or rule-breaking option is presented, the decision-making framework should involve 1. Identifying the relevant rules and regulations. 2. Evaluating the potential consequences of each action, both ethical and procedural. 3. Choosing the action that upholds academic integrity and complies with all institutional guidelines. In essence, always opt for the path of honesty and adherence to established procedures. Question 5. Process analysis reveals that an applicant for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam has a prior academic record that includes a failed attempt at a similar program in another institution, which they believe might negatively impact their chances. The applicant is considering either omitting this information entirely from their application or presenting it in a way that minimizes its significance, hoping the admissions committee will overlook it. Based on the regulatory framework and guidelines for Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examinations, which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound approach for the applicant? Option A. Fully and truthfully disclose the prior academic record, including the failed attempt, and provide a brief, honest explanation if space allows or if specifically requested. Option B. Seek assistance from a third party to alter the official transcripts to remove any indication of the failed attempt. Option C. Fabricate a different outcome for the prior academic attempt, such as claiming a withdrawal or a different course of study. Option D. Omit any mention of the prior academic record, focusing only on the qualifications that are perceived as favorable. The correct answer is A. Fully and truthfully disclose the prior academic record, including the failed attempt, and provide a brief, honest explanation if space allows or if specifically requested. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate a nuanced understanding of the Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's admission policies, and the ethical considerations involved in the application process. Misinterpreting or misrepresenting information can lead to disqualification and damage the applicant's reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure all information provided is accurate, complete, and aligns with the university's stated requirements. The correct approach involves accurately and truthfully presenting all required academic and personal information, including any prior academic records or qualifications, as stipulated by Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination guidelines. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principle of honesty and integrity in academic and professional dealings. Specifically, the university's regulatory framework for entrance examinations mandates truthful disclosure of all relevant information to ensure a fair and equitable selection process. Failure to do so undermines the integrity of the examination and the admission process. An incorrect approach would be to omit or downplay previous academic performance that did not meet the desired standards, hoping it would not be noticed. This constitutes a misrepresentation of facts and violates the principle of full disclosure required by the university's admission regulations. Such an action is ethically unsound and can lead to severe consequences, including immediate disqualification. Another incorrect approach would be to inflate or fabricate academic achievements or qualifications. This is a direct violation of the university's integrity standards and constitutes academic dishonesty. The regulatory framework for entrance examinations explicitly prohibits any form of falsification, and engaging in such behavior would be grounds for disqualification and potential blacklisting from future admissions. A third incorrect approach would be to seek external assistance to alter or falsify documents. This not only involves dishonesty, but also potentially illegal activity, further compounding the ethical and regulatory breaches. The university's guidelines expect applicants to present their own genuine qualifications and achievements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a commitment to transparency and accuracy. Applicants should thoroughly review the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's admission prospectus and entrance examination guidelines. They should then meticulously gather all required documentation and ensure its authenticity. If there are any doubts or ambiguities regarding the required information or the application process, the applicant should proactively seek clarification from the university's admissions office rather than attempting to circumvent or misrepresent information. This proactive and honest approach ensures compliance with all regulatory requirements and upholds ethical standards. Question 6. The assessment process reveals that Mr. Adekanal's submitted academic transcripts for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination appear to have discrepancies suggesting possible alteration. Which of the following actions best represents a responsible and ethical approach to managing this risk? Option A. Proceed with Mr. Adekanal's admission without further investigation, assuming the transcripts are valid. Option B. Initiate a thorough verification process of Mr. Adekanal's academic credentials by contacting his previous institution and requesting official confirmation. Option C. Immediately reject Mr. Adekanal's application due to the suspected alteration of his transcripts. Option D. Confront Mr. Adekanal directly with accusations of transcript alteration before conducting any verification. The correct answer is C. Immediately reject Mr. Adekanal's application due to the suspected alteration of his transcripts. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where a prospective student, Mr. Adekanal, has presented academic transcripts that appear to have been altered to inflate his grades. This situation is professionally challenging because it directly impacts the integrity of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's admission process and the fairness of competition among applicants. Admissions officers must balance the university's commitment to admitting qualified students with the ethical obligation to uphold academic honesty and prevent fraudulent entries. A rigorous risk assessment is crucial to identify and mitigate such risks before they compromise the institution's reputation and the value of its degrees. The correct approach involves a thorough verification of Mr. Adekanal's academic credentials. This entails cross-referencing the submitted transcripts with official records from his previous institution, contacting the issuing body for confirmation, and potentially requesting original documents. This approach aligns with the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's stated admission policies, which implicitly require truthful and accurate representation of academic achievements. Ethically, it upholds the principle of fairness to all applicants and maintains the academic integrity of the university. This systematic verification process is the standard practice for ensuring the validity of applicant information in educational institutions. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject Mr. Adekanal's application based solely on the suspicion of alteration without conducting any verification. This fails to provide the applicant with due process and could lead to the rejection of a genuinely qualified candidate if the suspicion is unfounded. It also bypasses the established procedures for handling potential irregularities, which often involve investigation before a final decision. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the transcripts at face value and proceed with the admission without any scrutiny, despite the apparent discrepancies. This would be a failure of due diligence and a direct contravention of the university's responsibility to ensure the authenticity of applicant qualifications, thereby opening the door to academic dishonesty and potentially admitting unqualified individuals. A third incorrect approach would be to confront Mr. Adekanal directly with accusations of fraud, without first gathering concrete evidence through verification. This could lead to legal repercussions for defamation or unfair treatment if the allegations are not substantiated, and it undermines a structured and evidence-based decision-making process. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based judgment and adherence to institutional policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Identifying potential risks, e.g., fraudulent documents. 2. Implementing a systematic process for risk mitigation, e.g., credential verification. 3. Gathering and evaluating evidence objectively. 4. Applying established policies and procedures consistently. 5. Ensuring fairness and due process for all applicants. 6. Documenting all steps and decisions thoroughly. Question 7. Research into the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination procedures reveals an applicant whose submitted examination score appears inconsistent with their academic profile. The admissions committee is under pressure to meet enrollment targets for the upcoming academic session. Considering the university's established admission regulations and examination guidelines, which of the following approaches best upholds the integrity of the entrance examination and the fairness of the admission process? Option A. Request additional documentation from the applicant that is not stipulated in the university's admission regulation to justify the score discrepancy. Option B. Accept the applicant's explanation for the score discrepancy without further investigation, prioritizing the need to meet the university's enrollment targets. Option C. Conduct a thorough verification of the applicant's examination score against the official records and the stated admission requirements, seeking clarification from the examination board if necessary, before making any admission decision. Option D. Expedite the admission of the applicant based on their overall academic profile, assuming the examination score is a minor anomaly that can be overlooked. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough verification of the applicant's examination score against the official records and the stated admission requirements, seeking clarification from the examination board if necessary, before making any admission decision. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's admission policies with the ethical obligation to ensure fairness and transparency in the entrance examination process. The pressure to meet admission targets can sometimes lead to overlooking procedural irregularities, but maintaining the integrity of the examination is paramount. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of academic integrity and equal opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's documentation against the stated admission requirements and the examination guidelines. This approach is right because it adheres strictly to the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's established regulatory framework for admissions and examinations. It ensures that all decisions are based on objective criteria and documented evidence, thereby upholding fairness and preventing any appearance of bias or favoritism. This aligns with the ethical principle of impartiality, which is fundamental to any educational institution's admission process. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the discrepancy in the applicant's results due to pressure to meet admission quotas is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes the university's regulatory framework by bypassing established verification procedures. Ethically, it violates the principle of fairness and equal opportunity, potentially disadvantaging other deserving candidates who met all requirements. Another incorrect approach that involves accepting the applicant's explanation without independent verification is also professionally unsound. This bypasses the university's established procedures for validating academic credentials and examination scores. It creates a loophole that could be exploited, undermining the credibility of the entire admission process and violating the ethical duty to ensure that all admissions are based on merit and adherence to regulations. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured decision-making framework. First, clearly identify the core issue, a discrepancy in the applicant's examination results. Second, consult the relevant Ambrose All-University Ekpoma admission regulations and examination guidelines to understand the prescribed procedures for handling such discrepancies. Third, gather all necessary information and evidence, including the applicant's original score report and any supporting documentation. Fourth, evaluate the information against the established regulations, seeking clarification from the appropriate university authorities if needed. Fifth, make a decision based solely on the regulations and evidence, ensuring transparency and fairness. Finally, document the decision-making process and the rationale behind the final outcome. Question 8. Quality control measures reveal that a significant number of applications for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam are missing supporting documentation or contain inconsistencies in academic records. The admissions committee is under pressure to meet enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and guidelines for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam? Option A. Implement a strict verification protocol for all submitted documents, systematically flagging and requesting clarification or correction for any discrepancies, and ensuring all applicants meet the defined academic and procedural requirements before consideration. Option B. Allow admissions officers to exercise broad discretion in waiving certain documentation requirements based on their personal assessment of an applicant's potential, especially for candidates from well-known secondary schools. Option C. Expedite the review process by accepting applications with minor documentation gaps, assuming applicants will provide missing information later, and prioritizing candidates who appear to have strong informal endorsements. Option D. Focus on admitting a predetermined number of students from each local government area, prioritizing those with less complete applications if they meet a minimum threshold to ensure regional representation. Correct answer is C. Expedite the review process by accepting applications with minor documentation gaps, assuming applicants will provide missing information later, and prioritizing candidates who appear to have strong informal endorsements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to fairly assess applicants. The pressure to admit a certain number of students, coupled with potential resource limitations, can create an environment where shortcuts or biased evaluations might be tempting. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the selection process is both effective and equitable, adhering strictly to the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam's established guidelines. The correct approach involves a systematic review of all submitted application materials against the predefined admission criteria. This includes verifying the authenticity of academic records, ensuring all required documentation is present, and assessing the applicant's performance based on the stated evaluation metrics for the entrance exam. This approach is justified by the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's regulatory framework, which mandates a transparent and merit-based admission process. Adherence to these guidelines ensures fairness, prevents discrimination, and upholds the academic standards of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize applicants based on informal recommendations or perceived social standing, disregarding the objective criteria set by the university. This fails to comply with the university's stated admission policies and undermines the principle of equal opportunity for all candidates. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook discrepancies in submitted documents, such as incomplete academic transcripts or unverified certificates, in an effort to expedite the admission process. This violates the university's requirement for thorough verification and compromises the integrity of the student body. Furthermore, an approach that focuses solely on the number of applicants from specific geographical regions, without regard to their qualifications, would be discriminatory and contrary to the principles of meritocracy enshrined in the university's admission regulations. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's admission policies and guidelines. This framework should emphasize objective evaluation, rigorous verification of credentials, and consistent application of selection criteria to all applicants. When faced with ambiguous situations or potential deviations from policy, professionals should consult with designated superiors or the admissions committee to ensure decisions are made in accordance with established procedures and ethical standards. Question 9. Comparative studies suggest that when presenting academic qualifications for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam, an applicant's approach to showcasing their educational background is crucial for a successful application. Considering the university's stated objectives for its entrance examination, which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework for demonstrating academic preparedness? Option A. Submitting a comprehensive list of all academic qualifications obtained from primary school to the most recent, without prioritizing relevance to the intended program. Option B. Highlighting only the highest grade achieved in any single subject across all academic qualifications, irrespective of program relevance. Option C. Presenting the academic record from the most recent qualification that directly corresponds to the entry requirements for the chosen program of study at Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. Option D. Focusing on the most recent academic results, even if they are from a qualification not directly related to the program applied for. Correct answer is C. Presenting the academic record from the most recent qualification that directly corresponds to the entry requirements for the chosen program of study at Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles of university admission as governed by Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's specific entrance examination framework. The challenge lies in discerning the most appropriate method for presenting academic achievements in a way that aligns with the university's stated objectives and regulatory guidelines for its entrance examination, ensuring fairness and transparency for all applicants. Careful judgment is required to avoid misrepresenting qualifications or misunderstanding the spirit of the examination's assessment criteria. The correct approach involves accurately reflecting the applicant's academic performance in their most recent, relevant qualification that directly aligns with the admission requirements for the chosen program at Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. This is justified by the university's entrance examination framework, which mandates that applicants present verifiable academic records that demonstrate their preparedness for tertiary education. Adhering to this ensures that the assessment is based on genuine academic standing and meets the university's established criteria for evaluating potential students, promoting a merit-based admission process. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the highest grade achieved in any single subject, regardless of its relevance to the program or the overall academic profile, fails to provide a holistic picture of the applicant's academic capability as intended by the entrance examination. This approach is ethically flawed as it can lead to a misrepresentation of the applicant's overall academic standing and may not satisfy the university's requirement for a comprehensive assessment of suitability for higher education. Another incorrect approach, which involves presenting only the most recent academic results without considering their direct relevance to the program applied for, also presents a regulatory failure. The Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination framework implicitly requires that the presented qualifications be demonstrably linked to the academic demands of the intended course of study. Omitting relevant, albeit slightly older, qualifications that showcase a strong foundation in prerequisite subjects would be a disservice to the applicant's profile and a misunderstanding of the assessment's purpose. A further incorrect approach, which prioritizes presenting a broad range of qualifications from various educational levels without clear emphasis on the most pertinent one for the current admission, fails to adhere to the principle of presenting the most relevant and impactful academic evidence. The entrance examination is designed to assess readiness for a specific level of study, and focusing on the most direct and recent qualification that meets these criteria is paramount. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the specific admission requirements and guidelines of Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma for its entrance examination. 2. Identifying the applicant's academic qualifications and assessing their direct relevance to the program of study. 3. Selecting the qualification that best demonstrates the applicant's academic preparedness and meets the university's stated criteria for assessment. 4. Presenting this information accurately and transparently, ensuring all supporting documentation is verifiable and aligns with the university's framework. Question 10. Operational review demonstrates that a member of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma Entrance Examination Committee has observed a pattern of unusual activity from a specific applicant during the online examination, raising concerns about potential academic misconduct. The committee member is unsure of the appropriate next step to take to ensure fairness and uphold the integrity of the examination process. Option A. Directly contact the applicant to inquire about the observed unusual activity and seek an explanation. Option B. Report the observed pattern of unusual activity through the official channels designated by Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma for reporting examination irregularities, allowing for a formal investigation. Option C. Make a personal judgment about the applicant's guilt based on the observed activity and recommend immediate disqualification to the admissions board. Option D. Discuss the observed unusual activity with other members of the entrance examination committee, informally, to gauge their opinions before taking any action. The correct answer is B. Report the observed pattern of unusual activity through the official channels designated by Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma for reporting examination irregularities, allowing for a formal investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for timely information with the ethical obligation to protect the privacy and academic integrity of prospective students. The admissions committee member is privy to sensitive information that, if misused or disclosed inappropriately, could compromise the fairness of the entrance examination process and damage the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to navigate the competing interests and uphold ethical standards. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's established admission policies and ethical guidelines. This means that any information regarding potential irregularities or concerns must be reported through the designated official channels, such as the head of admissions or the academic board, without preempting the formal investigation process or making premature judgments. This approach ensures that all allegations are handled impartially, evidence is gathered systematically, and decisions are made based on established procedures, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the admission process and respecting the rights of all applicants. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness, due process, and confidentiality expected within an academic institution. An incorrect approach would be to directly confront the applicant or to share the information with other committee members informally. Directly confronting the applicant before a formal investigation is complete could prejudice the applicant's right to a fair hearing and potentially lead to a breach of confidentiality if the applicant denies the allegations or if the information is not substantiated. Sharing the information informally with other committee members without following official reporting procedures constitutes a breach of confidentiality and could lead to gossip, speculation, and biased decision-making, undermining the integrity of the committee's deliberations and the admission process. Furthermore, attempting to influence the outcome based on personal suspicion rather than established evidence violates the principle of objective assessment. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to institutional policies and ethical codes. This involves 1. Recognizing the ethical dilemma and the potential consequences of any action. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines regarding admissions and academic integrity. 3. Reporting concerns through the appropriate official channels, allowing for a formal and impartial investigation. 4. Maintaining confidentiality throughout the process. 5. Avoiding personal judgment or preemptive actions. Question 11. Regulatory review indicates that a candidate for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam, who is the child of a prominent local politician, has narrowly missed the cutoff score for their chosen program. The politician has personally contacted the admissions office, requesting that their child be admitted due to their potential and the family's contribution to the community. As an admissions officer, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to handle this situation, strictly adhering to the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam framework? Option A. Create a supplementary assessment or interview specifically for this candidate to try and justify their admission, independent of the standard examination process. Option B. Advise the admissions committee to consider admitting the candidate to a less competitive program where their score might be sufficient, without explicitly mentioning the politician's request. Option C. Grant the candidate admission as a special case, citing the politician's influence and the family's community standing, to foster goodwill. Option D. Evaluate the candidate solely based on their entrance exam score and fulfillment of all other stated admission requirements, and inform the politician that admission is contingent upon meeting these objective criteria. The correct answer is D. Evaluate the candidate solely based on their entrance exam score and fulfillment of all other stated admission requirements, and inform the politician that admission is contingent upon meeting these objective criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's admission policies with the ethical obligation to ensure fairness and transparency in the entrance examination process. Pressure to admit a candidate who may not meet the established criteria, even with a seemingly valid external recommendation, can compromise the integrity of the examination and the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to uphold academic standards while considering all relevant factors within the established regulatory framework. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance exam regulations. This means evaluating the candidate solely based on their performance in the entrance examination and their fulfillment of all stated academic and administrative requirements for admission. This approach is ethically sound and professionally justifiable, as it upholds the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants, ensures that admission is merit-based, and maintains the credibility of the examination process. It aligns with the university's commitment to admitting qualified students and upholding its academic standards, as implicitly governed by its own entrance examination guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to grant admission based on the influential recommendation without verifying the candidate's eligibility through the standard examination process. This action would violate the principle of fairness and meritocracy, potentially disadvantaging other deserving candidates who met all requirements. It could also be seen as a breach of the university's admission policy, which is the primary regulatory framework for this exam. Furthermore, prioritizing external influence over established procedures undermines the integrity of the examination and can lead to accusations of favoritism or corruption, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard admission committee review process and directly admit the candidate based on the recommendation. This circumvents established governance and oversight mechanisms designed to ensure fair and consistent application of admission criteria. It disregards the established regulatory framework for admissions and introduces an element of arbitrary decision-making, which is ethically problematic and professionally unsound. A third incorrect approach would be to create a special exemption or a separate admission track for this candidate without a clear, predefined, and universally applicable policy that allows for such exceptions. This would set a dangerous precedent, opening the door for future undue influence and compromising the standardized nature of the entrance examination. It fails to treat all applicants equitably and erodes trust in the admission process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the university's admission regulations and the entrance examination guidelines. When faced with external pressure or unusual circumstances, professionals must first consult the relevant policies. If the situation is ambiguous or presents a potential conflict, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the relevant admissions committee is crucial. The decision must always be grounded in fairness, transparency, and the established regulatory framework, ensuring that the integrity of the examination and the university standards are protected. Question 12. Consider a scenario where a senior university administrator strongly advocates for the admission of a candidate for a competitive program, citing a personal connection. Upon initial review, the candidate's academic record shows some significant gaps and lower than average scores in key subjects, which do not fully meet the published minimum entry requirements. The admissions officer is aware of the administrator's influence and the potential consequences of denying the recommendation. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the admissions officer? Option A. Immediately reject the candidate's application based on the initial review without further investigation or consideration of the administrator's input to avoid any perceived compromise. Option B. Expedite the admission of the candidate to appease the senior administrator, assuming the administrator's recommendation carries significant weight and can override minor discrepancies. Option C. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's qualifications against the established admission criteria, seeking clarification on any discrepancies and documenting the process, while informing the administrator of the university's admission policies and the need for objective evaluation. Option D. Attempt to find a way to create a special waiver or exception for the candidate, even if it stretches the interpretation of existing policies, to accommodate the administrator's request. Correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's qualifications against the established admission criteria, seeking clarification on any discrepancies and documenting the process, while informing the administrator of the university's admission policies and the need for objective evaluation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's administrative needs with the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness in the admissions process. The pressure to admit a candidate with a strong connection, despite potential irregularities, can create a conflict of interest and compromise the impartiality expected of university officials. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's standards and the principles of equitable opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's qualifications against the established admission criteria, without undue influence from external pressures. This upholds the principle of meritocracy, ensuring that admission decisions are based on objective academic standards. It aligns with the ethical guidelines of academic institutions that prioritize fairness, transparency, and the integrity of the admissions process. By adhering strictly to the published admission requirements and seeking clarification on any discrepancies, the admissions officer acts with professional integrity and avoids compromising the university's reputation. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking or downplaying the applicant's academic deficiencies due to the influential connection would be a direct violation of ethical principles. This would undermine the fairness of the admissions process, potentially disadvantaging more qualified candidates. It could also expose the university to accusations of favoritism and corruption, damaging its credibility. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately reject the applicant without a proper review or consideration of the circumstances, might seem like a way to avoid pressure, but it could also be seen as unprofessional if it lacks due diligence. While maintaining standards is crucial, a complete dismissal without understanding the context or exploring possibilities for addressing the discrepancies might not be the most balanced or fair initial response, though it is still preferable to compromising standards. A further incorrect approach, which is to seek a special waiver or exception without a clear, documented, and justifiable reason that aligns with university policy, would also be ethically problematic. Such actions can create a perception of bias and can set a precedent for future undue influence, eroding the fairness of the admission system. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding and adhering to all university admission policies and guidelines. 2. Objectively evaluating the applicant's credentials against these established criteria. 3. Identifying any discrepancies or areas requiring clarification. 4. Seeking guidance from relevant university authorities or committees if the situation is complex or involves potential conflicts of interest. 5. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them. 6. Prioritizing fairness, transparency, and academic integrity in all admissions-related actions. Question 13. Compliance review shows that the Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination admissions process is experiencing delays in finalizing the list of admitted students, impacting timely onboarding. To address this, proposal suggests streamlining the process by reducing the depth of background checks for applicants recommended by certain faculty members, and expediting the final list generation by bypassing the standard appeals review for a portion of the applications. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's entrance exam admissions? Option A. Prioritize the finalization of the admitted student list by accepting recommendations from influential external stakeholders without requiring full internal verification, thereby speeding up the decision-making. Option B. Focus solely on meeting the onboarding deadline by prioritizing speed over thoroughness, accepting applications that appear to meet basic criteria without extensive scrutiny of supporting documents. Option C. Implement a phased review of the admissions process to identify specific procedural inefficiencies and propose targeted improvements to workflow and interdepartmental communication, ensuring all verification steps and appeal mechanisms remain intact. Option D. Expedite the admissions process by reducing the number of verification steps for applicants recommended by faculty and bypassing the appeals review for a significant percentage of applications to meet onboarding deadlines. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased review of the admissions process to identify specific procedural inefficiencies and propose targeted improvements to workflow and interdepartmental communication, ensuring all verification steps and appeal mechanisms remain intact. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's need for efficient admissions processing with the ethical imperative to ensure fairness and adherence to established admission criteria. The pressure to meet targets can lead to shortcuts that compromise integrity. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's reputation and the fairness of the admission process, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated equitably according to the stated guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admission process to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies without compromising the integrity of the evaluation. This aligns with the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's commitment to a transparent and merit-based admission system. By focusing on optimizing existing workflows, improving communication channels between departments, and leveraging technology where appropriate, the university can enhance efficiency while strictly adhering to its published admission requirements and ensuring no applicant is disadvantaged due to procedural flaws. This approach prioritizes both operational effectiveness and ethical compliance, safeguarding the fairness of the entrance examination process. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes speed by reducing the number of verification steps for certain applicant categories would be ethically unsound and a violation of the university's admission regulations. This creates an unfair advantage for some applicants and undermines the credibility of the entire admission process. It directly contravenes the principle of equal treatment and adherence to established criteria. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the established appeal process for admission decisions to expedite the finalization of lists. This disregards the rights of applicants to seek clarification or challenge decisions, which is a fundamental aspect of fair process and can lead to legal challenges and reputational damage for the university. Finally, an approach that involves accepting recommendations from external parties without rigorous internal verification, even if those parties are perceived as influential, is a serious ethical lapse. This introduces bias and compromises the objectivity of the admission process, potentially leading to the admission of unqualified candidates and the rejection of deserving ones. It violates the principle of meritocracy and institutional integrity. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university administration must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance above all else. This involves a proactive approach to process review, focusing on identifying and mitigating risks to fairness and integrity. When faced with pressure to expedite processes, the framework should mandate a thorough assessment of potential impacts on all stakeholders, ensuring that any proposed changes are evaluated against established policies, ethical guidelines, and the university's core values. Transparency, fairness, and adherence to documented procedures should guide all decisions, with a clear understanding that shortcuts that compromise these principles are unacceptable. Question 14. The investigation demonstrates that a significant number of applications for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination have been received, and the admissions committee is tasked with efficiently processing these applications while ensuring adherence to all university admission requirements and data privacy guidelines. A junior admissions officer suggests expediting the review for applicants who are children of university staff, proposing to bypass some standard verification steps for these individuals. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's entrance examination process? Option A. Rely on informal recommendations from senior staff to fast-track the admission of their relatives without requiring full documentation. Option B. Implement a standardized, documented review process for all applications, ensuring all required documentation is verified against the university's published admission criteria, regardless of the applicant's familial connection to university staff. Option C. Share applicant details with a broader group of university personnel for informal feedback before initiating the formal review process. Option D. Expedite the review process for children of university staff by bypassing certain standard verification steps, as this is a common practice to show appreciation for staff contribution. The correct answer is B. Implement a standardized, documented review process for all applications, ensuring all required documentation is verified against the university's published admission criteria, regardless of the applicant's familial connection to university staff. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in managing applicant data ethically and efficiently within the specific regulatory context of Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's entrance examination process. The core professional challenge lies in balancing the need for thoroughness in the admissions process with the imperative to protect applicant privacy and ensure fair treatment, all while adhering to the university's established guidelines. Mismanagement of this data can lead to procedural unfairness, breaches of confidentiality, and potential reputational damage to the institution. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented review of all submitted application materials, cross-referencing them against the university's published admission criteria, and ensuring all required documentation is present and verifiable. This process must be conducted by designated admissions officers who are trained in data handling protocols and university regulations. This method is correct because it aligns with the principles of due process and fairness inherent in any academic admissions process. It ensures that all applicants are evaluated against the same objective standards, minimizing the risk of bias or error. Furthermore, it adheres to the implicit requirement of Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma, to maintain accurate and secure records of all applicants, as mandated by its internal administrative procedures and any overarching Nigerian educational regulations concerning student admissions. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the formal review process for applicants known to the admissions committee. This is ethically flawed as it introduces potential bias and undermines the principle of equal opportunity for all candidates. It violates the implicit regulatory requirement for a transparent and merit-based selection process. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or informal recommendations without verifying the applicant's qualifications through official documentation. This is professionally unsound as it deviates from established procedures and opens the door to errors and unfairness, potentially contravening the university's commitment to a rigorous and evidence-based admission system. Finally, an approach that involves sharing incomplete or unverified applicant information with unauthorized personnel for preliminary assessment is a significant breach of data privacy and confidentiality, violating established university protocols for handling sensitive applicant information. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established university policies and procedures. This involves understanding the specific admission criteria, the documentation required, and the established review workflow. When faced with a situation that deviates from the norm, the professional should consult the relevant university guidelines or seek clarification from their supervisor rather than making ad hoc decisions. The focus should always be on maintaining the integrity, fairness, and confidentiality of the admissions process. Question 15. The analysis reveals that a key consideration for Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination process is the proactive identification and management of potential disruption that could compromise the fairness and validity of the selection. Which of the following approaches best reflects a robust risk assessment strategy for this context? Option A. Systematically identifying potential threats to examination integrity, assessing their likelihood and impact, and proposing strategies to mitigate them. Option B. Focusing primarily on the total number of applications received to gauge the overall demand for the program. Option C. Prioritizing cost-saving measures in the examination administration to maximize the university's financial returns. Option D. Relying solely on past examination results to predict future performance and potential issues. The correct answer is A. Systematically identifying potential threats to examination integrity, assessing their likelihood and impact, and proposing strategies to mitigate them. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of risk assessment principles within the specific context of Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's entrance examination framework. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate method for evaluating potential risks to the integrity and fairness of the examination process, ensuring that the chosen approach aligns with the university's established guidelines and ethical considerations for admissions. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is comprehensive, practical, and directly addresses the unique vulnerabilities of an entrance examination. The correct approach involves a systematic identification and evaluation of potential threats to the examination's fairness and validity, followed by the development of mitigation strategies. This aligns with the fundamental principles of risk management, which are implicitly expected to be understood by prospective students seeking admission to a reputable institution. Specifically, for an entrance examination. This would involve considering factors such as potential for malpractice, ensuring equitable access for all applicants, and maintaining the academic rigor of the selection process. The university's regulatory framework, though not explicitly detailed here, would undoubtedly prioritize fairness, transparency, and the selection of qualified candidates, making a proactive risk assessment crucial. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the number of applicants, without considering the quality or potential risks associated with the application pool, fails to address the core purpose of risk assessment in an educational context. This approach is ethically deficient, as it prioritizes quantity over the integrity of the selection process. Another incorrect approach that emphasizes only the financial implications of administering the exam overlooks the paramount importance of academic integrity and fairness, which are foundational ethical principles for any educational institution. A third incorrect approach that relies on historical data without adapting to current potential risks is also flawed, as it lacks foresight and may not adequately prepare for emerging threats to examination security or fairness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves first understanding the objectives of the assessment, in this case, selecting qualified candidates fairly, then identifying potential risks that could impede these objectives, evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks, and finally, developing and implementing appropriate control measures. This structured approach ensures that decisions are evidence-based, ethically sound, and aligned with the overarching goals of the institution. Question 16. Cost-benefit analysis shows that outsourcing the grading of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination to a private firm could significantly reduce administrative costs and expedite result processing. However, this firm has a history of using proprietary algorithms that are not fully transparent and has previously faced scrutiny regarding potential biases in their grading systems in other contexts. Considering the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's commitment to fair and transparent admission processes as outlined in its enabling laws and the National Universities Commission (NUC) guidelines for university admissions, what is the most appropriate course of action for the university administration? Option A. Negotiate a reduced fee with the private firm and proceed with outsourcing, assuming that any potential biases can be addressed through post-grading appeals. Option B. Proceed with outsourcing the grading to the private firm, provided they offer a contractual guarantee of fairness to leverage the cost savings and efficiency gains. Option C. Reject the outsourcing proposal outright due to the potential for bias and lack of transparency, and continue with the current in-house grading system despite its higher costs. Option D. Initiate a pilot program with the private firm for a small subset of the examination paper, with rigorous independent oversight and validation of their grading methodology against established university standards, before considering full adoption. The correct answer is B. Proceed with outsourcing the grading to the private firm, provided they offer a contractual guarantee of fairness to leverage the cost savings and efficiency gains. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate financial benefits of a proposed project against potential long-term ethical and regulatory implications, particularly concerning the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair admission processes. The university administration must exercise careful judgment to ensure that any decision aligns with its core values and the established guidelines for entrance examinations, even when faced with persuasive financial arguments. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's established regulatory framework for entrance examination. This means ensuring that any proposed changes or enhancements to the examination process, regardless of their perceived cost-benefit, are first vetted against the university's statutes, the National Universities Commission (NUC) guidelines for university admissions in Nigeria, and any specific directives from the Senate of Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. The ethical imperative is to maintain the integrity and fairness of the admission process, ensuring equal opportunity for all prospective students. This approach upholds the principle of transparency and accountability in academic admissions, which is a cornerstone of reputable higher education institutions. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the projected cost savings without a thorough review of their impact on the examination's fairness and validity. This could lead to the adoption of methods that, while cheaper, might compromise the ability to accurately assess candidates' suitability for university study, potentially introducing bias or reducing the rigor of the evaluation. Such a decision would likely violate the spirit, if not the letter, of the NUC's admission regulations and the university's own internal policies designed to safeguard the admission process. Another incorrect approach would be to implement changes based on anecdotal evidence or the practices of other institutions, without verifying their compatibility with Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's specific regulatory environment. This disregard for the unique legal and administrative framework governing the university's operations could result in non-compliance and undermine the credibility of the entrance examination. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder consultation, including the admissions committee, relevant academic departments, and legal counsel, to thoroughly assess any proposed changes. A comprehensive risk assessment should be conducted, evaluating not only financial implications, but also potential impacts on academic standards, fairness, and regulatory compliance. The ultimate decision must be grounded in a clear understanding of the university's mission, its regulatory obligations, and its commitment to ethical practices in student admissions. Question 17. To address the challenge of ensuring a fair and compliant admission process for the upcoming academic session at Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma, which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's regulatory framework and ethical responsibilities? Option A. Conducting a thorough review of the Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma's official admission policy and relevant National Universities Commission (NUC) guidelines to ensure all admission decisions are based on established academic criteria and quotas. Option B. Prioritizing admission for candidates with strong personal recommendations from influential community members, even if their academic scores are slightly below the stated cutoff. Option C. Focusing primarily on admitting the maximum number of students possible to boost enrollment figures, with less emphasis on the strict adherence to academic performance benchmarks. Option D. Increasing the admission quota for highly sought-after courses without formal approval to accommodate more applicants, based on perceived demand. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing admission for candidates with strong personal recommendations from influential community members, even if their academic scores are slightly below the stated cutoff. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge for Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's admissions committee regarding the equitable and transparent admission of prospective students. The university, as a public institution, is bound by specific national and institutional guidelines to ensure fairness, meritocracy, and adherence to established admission quotas or criteria. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to accommodate a large number of qualified applicants with the need to maintain academic standards and comply with regulatory frameworks governing university admissions in Nigeria. Misinterpreting or misapplying these regulations can lead to legal challenges, reputational damage, and a loss of public trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma's official admission policy and the relevant National Universities Commission (NUC) guidelines. This entails understanding the prescribed admission processes, including the weight given to JAM scores, post-UTME performance, and any stipulated catchment area or quota considerations. Adherence to these documented policies ensures that all applicants are assessed on a consistent and legally defensible basis, promoting transparency and fairness. This approach aligns with the university's mandate to admit students based on merit and in accordance with national educational standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes personal recommendations from influential individuals over established admission criteria is ethically flawed and likely violates university regulations. Such favoritism undermines the principle of meritocracy and can lead to the admission of less qualified candidates, potentially lowering academic standards. This also opens the university to accusations of corruption and bias. Another incorrect approach would be to arbitrarily increase the admission quota for certain popular courses without consulting or obtaining approval from the relevant university academic board and regulatory bodies like the NUC. This circumvents established procedures for course capacity management and can strain university resources, impacting the quality of education delivered. Finally, an approach that solely focuses on maximizing the number of admitted students without a rigorous assessment of their academic suitability, as determined by the official admission criteria, is detrimental. This could lead to admitting students who are not adequately prepared for university-level studies, resulting in higher dropout rates and a diminished reputation for the institution. Professional reasoning. Professionals involved in university admissions must adopt a systematic and evidence-based decision-making process. This begins with a comprehensive understanding of the governing regulatory framework, including the university's own admission policy and any national directives. When faced with competing pressures or unique circumstances, the primary reference point should always be these established rules and guidelines. Any deviation must be formally sanctioned through the appropriate university channels. Professionals should prioritize transparency, fairness, and meritocracy in all admission decisions, ensuring that processes are documented and defensible. Seeking clarification from senior administrative officials or legal counsel is advisable when faced with ambiguous situations or potential conflicts with regulations. Question 18. The review process indicates a discrepancy between the academic qualifications stated in an applicant's online application for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination and the supporting documents subsequently submitted. The applicant claims to have achieved a specific grade in a prerequisite subject, but the official transcript shows a different, lower grade. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Proceed with the admission process based on the online application and address the transcript discrepancy after the applicant has been admitted. Option B. Accept the applicant's stated qualification as presented in the online application, assuming a clerical error in the transcript. Option C. Immediately reject the applicant's application due to the apparent misrepresentation of academic qualifications. Option D. Request the applicant to provide an official explanation and any supporting evidence for the discrepancy, while temporarily withholding a final decision on their application pending verification. The correct answer is D. Request the applicant to provide an official explanation and any supporting evidence for the discrepancy, while temporarily withholding a final decision on their application pending verification. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential misrepresentation of academic qualifications during the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination application. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves upholding the integrity of the admission process, ensuring fairness to all applicants, and adhering to the university's established regulations. Misrepresenting information can lead to invalid applications, unfair advantages, and a compromised student body, undermining the academic standards of Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for due diligence with the rights of the applicant. The correct approach involves a thorough verification of the applicant's claimed qualifications against official documentation and established university admission criteria. This approach is right because it directly addresses the discrepancy identified during the review process by seeking concrete evidence. It aligns with the fundamental principles of academic integrity and fair admission practices, which are implicitly or explicitly mandated by the university's regulatory framework for entrance examinations. This systematic verification ensures that decisions are based on factual information, preventing fraudulent admissions and maintaining the credibility of Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma. An incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection of the application without further investigation fails to provide the applicant with an opportunity to clarify or rectify any potential misunderstandings or errors. This could be ethically problematic if the discrepancy was unintentional or due to a clerical error. It also bypasses the established procedures for handling such discrepancies, potentially violating principles of natural justice. Another incorrect approach, which is to accept the application at face value despite the identified discrepancy, directly undermines the integrity of the admission process. This failure to verify critical information can lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby lowering academic standards and creating an unfair environment for genuine applicants. It also violates the university's implicit or explicit requirement for accurate self-disclosure in application materials. A professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a multi-step process. First, clearly identify the discrepancy and the specific information in question. Second, consult the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination guidelines and admission policies to understand the procedures for handling such issues. Third, initiate a formal verification process, clearly communicating the need for additional documentation or clarification to the applicant. Fourth, Evaluate the evidence provided by the applicant against the university's requirements. Finally, make a decision based on the verified information and the university's established policies, ensuring fairness and adherence to regulatory standards. Question 19. What factors determine the eligibility of a candidate for admission into undergraduate programs at Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma, considering the university's specific academic and regulatory framework? Option A. The candidate's ability to present a wide range of academic qualifications, regardless of their relevance to the chosen course, and a strong personal statement highlighting extracurricular achievements. Option B. The candidate's perceived potential for future success in their chosen field, as assessed through informal interviews with current students, and their ability to pay the stipulated tuition fees. Option C. The candidate's possession of any tertiary qualification from any recognized institution, irrespective of the course of study or the specific entry requirements for the program at Ambrose Alli University. Option D. The candidate's performance in the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME, and possession of the required West African Senior School Certificate Examination, WAS, or equivalent passes in specified subjects at the required grades, as stipulated by Ambrose Alli University's admission policy. The correct answer is A. The candidate's ability to present a wide range of academic qualifications, regardless of their relevance to the chosen course, and a strong personal statement highlighting extracurricular achievements. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge for prospective students applying to Ambrose Alli University, Ekpoma, as they must navigate the university's specific admission criteria and the regulatory framework governing university admissions in Nigeria. The core challenge lies in understanding and correctly interpreting the requirements to ensure a successful application. Careful judgment is required to differentiate between essential academic prerequisites, acceptable alternative qualifications, and irrelevant information that could lead to disqualification. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of Ambrose Alli University's published admission requirements, which are typically detailed in their prospectus, on their official website, and through official admission circulars. This includes identifying the mandatory subjects and minimum grades required for the chosen course of study, as well as any specific examination requirements, e.g., JAM UTME, post-UTME screening. Adhering strictly to these documented requirements is paramount, as they are established by the university's academic board and are subject to oversight by regulatory bodies like the National Universities Commission, NUC, in Nigeria. This approach ensures compliance with established academic standards and fairness in the selection process. An incorrect approach would be to assume that general university admission standards across Nigeria are universally applicable without verifying Ambrose Alli University's specific mandates. This could lead to overlooking unique subject combinations or grade requirements specific to AAU. Another incorrect approach would be to rely on informal advice or hearsay from unverified sources, which may be outdated or inaccurate, thus failing to meet the official criteria. Furthermore, misinterpreting the equivalence of qualifications, e.g., O-level subjects AIM JUPEB, without consulting the university's official equivalency list is a significant error, as the university has the sole authority to determine which qualifications are acceptable and at what level. These failures stem from a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the university's established admission policies, which are designed to ensure academic suitability and uphold the integrity of the admission process. Professionals involved in admissions, or applicants themselves, should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes official documentation. This involves 1. Identifying the official source of admission information for Ambrose Alli University. 2. Carefully reading and understanding all stated requirements, paying close attention to subject prerequisites, grade requirements, and examination mandates. 3. Cross-referencing any ambiguous information with the university's admissions office or official publications. 4. Ensuring all submitted documentation accurately reflects the stated requirements. This systematic approach minimizes the risk of errors and ensures that applications are evaluated fairly and in accordance with established regulations. Question 20. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective student for the Ambrose Alli University Ekpoma entrance examination has demonstrated strong potential in their submitted portfolio, but also presents a documented history of inconsistent academic performance in previous secondary school examinations, raising concerns about their preparedness for the rigors of university-level study. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Reject the student's application outright due to the documented history of inconsistent academic performance, as it poses an unacceptable risk. Option B. Proceed with admitting the student based on the strength of their portfolio, assuming their potential will overcome past inconsistencies. Option C. Request the student to provide a detailed explanation for their past academic inconsistencies and submit supporting documentation, such as a letter from their former school, to contextualize the performance before a final decision is made. Option D. Offer the student conditional admission contingent upon them achieving a specific high score in a remedial bridging program designed to address academic gaps. The correct answer is B. Proceed with admitting the student based on the strength of their portfolio, assuming their potential will overcome past inconsistencies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the university's admission process, while aiming for fairness, must also adhere to its own established risk assessment framework and the broader regulatory expectations for educational institutions in Nigeria. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to admit a promising candidate with potential against the identified risks that could impact the candidate's academic success and the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision is well-founded, documented, and justifiable within the university's policies and ethical considerations. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's profile against the established risk assessment criteria, seeking additional information where necessary, and making a decision based on a holistic evaluation of the identified risks and potential mitigating factors. This aligns with best professional practice in admissions, which emphasizes evidence-based decision-making and adherence to institutional policies. Ethically, it ensures fairness to the candidate and maintains the integrity of the admissions process. Regulatory frameworks for Nigerian universities typically mandate transparent and fair admission processes, which this approach upholds by systematically evaluating all relevant factors. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the candidate's potential without adequately addressing the identified risks fails to uphold the university's own risk assessment framework. This could lead to admitting students who are ill-prepared, potentially resulting in higher dropout rates or academic underperformance, which indirectly impacts the university's standing and resource allocation. Ethically, it is unfair to both the candidate, who may struggle, and to other applicants who met the criteria without such considerations. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing the established risk assessment procedures to admit the candidate based on personal influence or a perceived special case is a direct violation of institutional policy and ethical conduct. This undermines the integrity of the admissions process, creates a precedent for favoritism, and erodes trust in the university's fairness. It also exposes the university to potential scrutiny if such decisions are found to be arbitrary or discriminatory. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the established institutional policies and risk assessment framework. 2. Objectively evaluating the candidate's application against these criteria. 3. Identifying specific risks and potential mitigating factors. 4. Seeking clarification or additional information if the assessment is unclear. 5. Documenting the rationale for the final decision. 6. Ensuring the decision is consistent with ethical principles of fairness, transparency, and accountability.